All right, so today we're going over the endocrine system. Okay, so screen. Okay. So, okay. Sorry about that. It's taking a little while. Sorry. Okay. So endocrine system. Okay. Inside. So it interacts with the nervous system. So the endocrine system is a slow moving control system. Okay. It is a dispersed group of ductless glands, the things that secrete things into the bloodstream so that it doesn't go through ducts. Okay. So anywhere that there's endocrine glands, you need a large blood supply. Okay. All right. Okay. The pure endocrine organs, pituitary gland, pineal gland, the thyroid and parathyroid, the adrenals. Okay. And then there's organs that have that's mostly endocrine, so thymus, pancreas, gonads, hypothalamus, and then some endocrine cells, heart, digestive tract, kidney, skin. Okay, so here's the location of the major endocrine organs. So make sure you know this for your exam. Okay. The class of hormones. Okay. Okay. We're going to skip. Okay. Control hormones. We're going to skip. Okay. The control of hormones is always in these negative feedback loops. And we'll cover this again in physiology, but basically you want to keep your hormone levels to a very regulated level. So if there's too little, you want to secrete a little bit. If there's too much, you want to stop, okay? All right, the pituitary gland. So don't think of the pituitary gland as one gland, think of it as two, okay? The anterior pituitary and the posterior pituitary. These are very different things, and I'll explain why in a little bit, okay? They're attached to the hypothalamus by this short little stalk called the infundibulum, okay? This little stalk here is called the infundibulum. Okay, so anterior pituitary, posterior pituitary. You are not responsible for the parts of the anterior pituitary or the posterior pituitary, but you are responsible for the hormones. Okay, okay, the anterior lobe. Okay, the trophic hormones regulate the hormone secretion of other glands. So trophic hormones control other hormones. Like for example, thyroid stimulating hormone controls thyroid hormone. Okay, and adrenocorticotropic hormone controls cortisol hormone. Okay, follicle stimulating hormone stimulates estrogen production in the follicles. Okay, and luteinizing hormone controls other stuff. Okay, so tropic hormones regulate hormone secretion of other glands. Okay. All right. Growth hormone, prolactin, okay, and MSH. They work directly on non-endocrine target tissues. Growth hormone actually does both. The other name for growth hormone actually, okay, is actually somatotropin, which means it works on the body and it regulates other hormones, in particular IGF-1 and IGF-2. But that's outside the realm of this class. Okay. All right, so let's cover what these guys do. Thyroid stimulating hormone signals the thyroid gland to stimulate thyroid hormone. Adrenal corticotropic hormone stimulates the adrenal cortex to secrete cortisol and mineralocorticoids to deal with stress. Gonadotropins, okay. Our FSH and LH will cover that much more detail when we cover the reproductive system. Okay, growth hormone again is somatotropic hormone. Okay, stimulates the body by increasing protein production and the growth of epithelial plates, and that causes growth. Okay. Melanocyte stimulating hormone, MSH, works in appetite suppression. The last one, prolactin, favor of lactin milk, targets milk production. Okay. All right. So let me go through those for a second. Okay. So these hormones actually control other stuff. Okay. So let's take a look at growth hormone. All right. Images, all right. Crap. What's not working? Share screen. All right. So this is Andre the Giant. Okay. And you can see how big these people are. Okay. Like Hulk Hogan's a big dude already. And he looks tiny compared to Andre the Giant. Okay. You know, you see Andre the Giant around other people, and they look like incredibly tiny. Okay. So Andre the Giant, what he had was actually a pituitary tumor. Okay, he had elevated levels of growth hormone. Okay, and so that's why he got so big. The sad, I mean, he lived a very famous life, but he died very early. And you know, the sad part of the story is if he grew up on a farm. If he grew up in a city where they had more access to modern medicine, they would have probably caught that early and they could have stopped it. And he could have lived a normal, relatively normal life. And, you know, but he wouldn't have been world famous or anything. Okay. So make sure for this class, you understand what the hormone is. Okay, I don't care about the cell type. There's one exception to that rule, but in general, I don't care about cell type. I care about the organs and effects. Okay. Okay. So for every hormone, I want to know where it's coming from. Okay, and what the effects are. Okay, like growth hormone causes things to grow, and if there's hyposecretion, that means you get dwarfism. If there's hypersecretion, then you get gigantism. Okay. Prolactin, if there's too much growth hormone, or if there's too much prolactin, you start inappropriately producing milk. Okay. Okay, the way the anterior pituitary attaches to the hypothalamus is not a direct connection. It is a blood connection. Okay, so here, the hypothalamus is controlling the anterior pituitary by releasing the hormones here, the releasing and inhibiting hormones. Okay, and then it travel through a portal to get here. So remember, portal systems, artery, capillary, vein, capillary, vein. Okay, so artery, capillary, vein, capillary, vein. Okay, the hypophyseal portal system. Okay, so here the hypothalamus either releases a hormone that stimulates production or inhibits production, and then it travels out of here, which then controls the anterior pituitary. Okay, and here are the hormones that are regulated that way. Okay. All right, switching tracks. Now we're on the posterior lobe of the pituitary. Okay, the posterior pituitary is actually part of the brain. Okay, the anterior pituitary is formed at the roof of the mouth and goes up. The posterior pituitary is part of the brain and goes down. They just meet in the same location, but they're not really the same thing. Okay, so the posterior pituitary is actually part of the brain, structurally part of the brain. Okay, as part of the brain, the axons that make up this thing is the hypothalamal hypophyseal tract. Okay, so that is a direct connection, right? Axons are directly connected. Okay, so the axons are directly connected. Okay, they run through here and they release directly in the bloodstream here. Okay, there are two hormones that are made in the posterior pituitary, okay, or stored in the pituitary. These are two of my favorite hormones. So ADH, okay. The other term for ADH, which is probably a better way of understanding what it actually is vasopressin. Okay, ADH, antidiuretic hormone. Okay, diuretic is something diuretic is something makes you go pee. So antidiuretic is something that prevents you from peeing. Okay, so antidiuretic hormone or vasopressin. How ADH actually works is very simple. Okay, ADH makes the kidneys reabsorb water. So if I need water, one of the ways I conserve water is not pee so much. And if I don't pee so much, I retain the water. So the kidneys reabsorb water, and that allows me to maintain water. The water is obviously found in the blood, so I maintain blood pressure. So vasopressin increases blood pressure. Okay. Oxytocin is definitely my favorite hormone, so it will show up on a test somewhere. Okay, oxytocin induces contractions of the reproductive organs. Okay, so it causes childbirth. Okay, it causes contraction in the uterus during childbirth. It also injects milk during breastfeeding. Okay, one second. Okay, let me finish oxytocin. Oxytocin, the other important thing it does is bonding between mother and child. Okay. So from the point of view of the infant, it is very important that the mother actually, likes you. So oxytocin is released from the mother, and that causes bonding between the mother and whoever is there, and that's the baby. So like, during childbirth, right? Obviously, the baby comes out, and then every time you breastfeed, it reinforces the bonding between mother and child, and that's actually a really important thing for oxytocin. Okay, so okay, um, so the thyroid gland. Okay, so it's located in anterior neck. Okay, it produces two things. The only one I care about is thyroid hormone. Okay, uh, calcitonin actually does work, but it's not a major contributor or regulator of calcium in humans. Um, okay, so the thyroid gland, I don't know why there's um, no thing about the thyroid gland, but the thyroid gland produces something called thyroid hormone. Thyroid hormone controls your um, controls your daily metabolism. Okay, so too much thyroid hormone, you get overexcited and you can't rest. Too little thyroid hormone, and you have this inability to get out of bed and couch potato thing. Okay, parathyroid hormone, it controls blood calcium concentrations. Okay. Okay. The adrenal. Okay. The adrenal gland has two parts: the adrenal medulla and the adrenal cortex. Again, exactly like the same thing in the pituitary. The adrenal medulla and the adrenal cortex are from two separate locations, and they are two very different things. The adrenal medulla is actually a cluster of neurons, and they're actually part of the sympathetic nervous system. They're the ones that secrete huge amounts of epinephrine and norepinephrine, which we consider adrenaline. Okay, the adrenal cortex forms the bulk of the gland, and that is a real endocrine organ and secretes cortisol and mineralocorticoids. Okay, all adrenal hormones deal with terror, anger, or danger and stress. There are two types of stress. There's short-term stress, running from a lion, and long-term stress, uh, dealing with like a traumatic injury, like a broken arm. Okay, these are like the actual situations, like what a caveman would experience. Okay, I mean, paying your mortgage on time and crap. That is long-term stress, but that is, not what it's designed for. Okay. All right. So here, okay, that I'm gonna explain you to this slide. This is short-term stress. Okay, that catecholamines, epinephrine, norepinephrine. This is what happens when you encounter adrenaline. Okay, so short-term stress. This is long-term stress. Long-term stress. Okay, you come this way. ACTH is secreted here. It comes here, releases glucocorticoids and mineralocorticoids. The glucocorticoids, okay, protein and fats converted into glucose are broken down for energy. This is why people who are stressed tend to have they break down proteins, which prevents muscle building, and they have higher levels of glucose, which ends up you putting on fat. The blood glucose levels increase, which is not good for you. The immune system is suppressed. That's why people who are stressed out and stuff usually have outbreaks of diseases or breakouts of herpes and chickenpox, shingles. Okay, the mineralocorticoids causes the kidneys to retain sodium and water, which makes you feel bloated. The blood volume and blood pressure increase as well. Okay, so long-term stress not good for you. Okay, the long-term stress system is really set up for you to like help you maintain when you have a broken arm and you need higher levels of glucose and energy and stuff like that to rebuild the arm. Not not stress out about finals. Okay. Okay. So back. Okay, so you guys know this stuff already, right? So the epinephrine, norepinephrine, the cortisol, the mineralocorticoids, the only one you have to know is aldosterone. Okay, aldosterone is the terminal hormone in something called the RAA pathway, renin, angiotensin, aldosterone. Okay, it causes an increase in blood pressure. Okay. The pineal gland secretes melatonin, which helps in circadian rhythm. Okay. The pancreas we'll discuss twice, once in this chapter and once when we talk about digestion. This chapter we're dealing with the endocrine cells of the pancreas. Okay. The endocrine cells are also called the pancreatic islets or the islets of Langerhans. Okay, the islets of Langerhans have two types of cells, alpha cells and beta cells. Okay, this is the only two types of cells you have to know in this chapter. Alpha cells secrete glucagon. Beta cells secrete insulin. Okay, alpha cells secrete glucagon. Glucagon helps raise blood sugar levels. Okay, so if you're running and stuff, you run out of blood sugar, your alpha cells will tell your kidney, or not kidneys, your liver to release blood sugar. Okay? All right. So alpha cells and beta cells. So beta cells secrete insulin. That's the one you usually hear about, right? Insulin causes the body cells to take up glucose from the bloodstream, and it promotes the storage of glucose as glycogen in the liver. So when there's too much, drink a Pepsi or whatever, that sugar that's in the bloodstream tells the body to release insulin. Insulin uptakes that sugar and stores it as glycogen or stores it as fat. Okay. Okay. Don't worry about delta and F cells. Okay. The thymus secretes thymopoietin and thymosin, and they stimulate the immune system. Okay. The gonads is the major source of sex hormones. So testes and ovaries. So in male, the testes produce testosterone, which promotes the formation of sperm and maintains the secondary sex characteristics of the male. Okay. In the females, the ovaries, they actually make androgens as well. Androgen is something that makes you male, but it's converted right away to estrogen and progesterone. Estrogen maintains a secondary sex characteristics of females, and progesterone prepares the uterus for pregnancy. Progesterone, progestation. Okay. Okay. Endocrine cells occur within the heart. So the one that you definitely have to know is the heart one, which is ANP, atrial natriuretic peptide. So natrium, the word in the middle of this ANP, is sodium. Okay, so when you have too much blood, when your blood pressure is too high, okay, the atria overfills, and when it overfills, it secretes ANP. ANP causes your kidneys to dump sodium. When you dump sodium, you also dump water, so you pee more. Okay, you pee more, you lower your blood pressure. Okay. All right, the kidneys secrete two important hormones, renin and erythropoietin. Okay, renin is the beginning of the RAA pathway. Okay, so your kidneys measure the amount of, and we'll cover this one more time when we talk about kidneys. Your kidneys measure the amount of blood going to the kidneys. If there's not enough, it secretes renin. Renin is the beginning of the RAA pathway, which ends up increasing your blood pressure. So more blood flow to the kidneys. Okay, the next one, erythropoietin, otherwise known as EPO, is a hormone that causes an increase in red blood cells. Okay, so there's always going to be red blood cell loss. Okay, so your kidneys will always release a little bit of EPO to maintain the amount of red blood cells in the bloodstream. But if you bleed a lot, then your kidneys will make more EPO, okay, to replace the amount of red blood cells you made. Okay. All right, so the disorders, gigantism is oversecretion of GH in children. Pituitary dwarfism is the hyposecretion of GH. Diabetes insipidus is not enough ADH, which means you're making a lot more urine than you should, and you have to like watch very carefully your water intake. Okay. Okay, diabetes. Okay, insufficient secretion of insulin. Okay. There's two types of diabetes, type 1 and type 2. Okay, type 1, okay, is type 1 diabetes used to be called juvenile diabetes. Okay, is a T cell mediated immune response which destroys beta cells. Okay, if it destroys your beta cells, your body no longer makes insulin, and so that's why you need a little pump that produces insulin or pumps insulin. Okay, type 2 diabetes used to be called adult onset diabetes, but they've found type 2 diabetes for like 9-year-olds now. So it's type 2 diabetes. Okay, usually occurs after age 40. It's your cells have lowered sensitivity to insulin, and therefore they're no longer responding to insulin anymore. Okay, okay. It's controlled by dietary changes and regular exercise. So stop eating so much sugar, regular exercise, especially the putting on of muscle. We'll explain it in physio. Putting on muscle actually can reverse the effects of diabetes because muscle cells uptake sugar without insulin signaling. Okay. Okay, Graves' disease is the most common type of hyperthyroidism. Thyroid hormone controls metabolism, so overstimulation of thyroid hormone causes nervousness, weight loss, sweating, rapid heart rate, inability to sleep or shut down. Okay. Hypothyroidism, low metabolic rate, weight gain. Okay. This is a goiter. Okay. Goiter is caused by inadequate levels of iodine. Iodine is the center portion of the thyroid hormone. Not enough iodine leads to a thyroid hormone deficiency, and you can see the goiter right there. Okay. Honestly, this is a third world country problem. Iodine is in seafood, so if you eat a decent amount of seafood, you have enough iodine. Okay, the United States and most other countries, okay, deal with this problem by putting iodine in salt. So if you look at your salt bottle, it'll say iodine added, and even if there is no iodine, it'll say like no iodine added. Okay. Okay. General cortex, Cushing's disease, Addison's disease. Okay. All right. We'll skip the endocrine system throughout life thing. Okay. But like I said, the anterior pituitary and is from bottom up, posterior pituitary is brain down. Okay. All right. So stop there.